Hello and welcome back to the RevOps Show. This week, Doug and Jess are focusing on the challenges of changing your CRM within a sales organization. So essentially, change management with a focus around if you're switching your CRM, how you can manage that within your sales organization. There's a lot of great information in today's episode that you are not going to want to miss. So enough of this intro, let's get on with the show.
Jess,
Doug,
what's going on in the world of RevOps today?
not a whole lot.
Yeah, so you're mind clear, rested, ready. You got a exciting topic to talk about today?
We do. I always get
nervous
excited.
though, because it's kind of like a one topic. Usually we try to cover like 18 topics in a topic, but
Yeah, I thought I'd narrow this down. I always get excited when we talk about CRM. So
well, let's go.
okay, so I want to talk about the challenge of changing a CRM within a sales organization. So change management with a focus around if we're switching our CRM, how do you manage that with the sales team? So
Just the sales team?
Yeah, the sales organization, not the sales team, but the sales organization. So
What's the difference?
I make that distinction because when I hear sales team, I think sales reps, and sales organization would include like the management,
But not marketing,
not marketing,
not
no.
operations. So don't pay attention. Okay. Because I want to point out that when you if you're changing your CRM, you're impacting more than just your sales organization.
Absolutely. But I want to talk about this for just the sales piece of it.
A
couple of the questions are going to start out.
Very well, but
I know. Well, and we are going to start a little broad and then kind of get into the focus around sales. So
or so you
how?
think.
Well, yeah. So we'll see. We'll see what happens. Have you seen most organizations approach change of a CRM? Like how do most
Badly.
people do it?
Badly.
Tell me more.
Well, can I take a step back?
Yeah, sure, of course.
What is CRM in this?
So as I was putting this together, I knew I was going to get that question because we talk about, what are we talking about when we talk about CRM?
Well, one of the, you wanted me to give you specifics about how people handle it badly. One of it is we never actually stop and say, what is a CRM? And it's important because, today I think CRM has become almost a meaningless term because so many different people are calling their thing CRM. And I'm not saying that that's necessarily wrong, but, in the end, a CRM is it's a customer relationship management program or a customer relationship management database. And so when people go, my team's not using the CRM, they're putting everything in spreadsheets. Well, the reality is that's a wrong statement. They are using a CRM. The CRM is a spreadsheet.
Yeah.
Right now, that's not necessarily a good CRM. Everyone's keeping everything in Outlook. Outlook is a CRM. So it really comes down to, what are we talking about as a CRM, and really what is the job that you're looking for the CRM to do? Like what? So I would say why. The first thing that I think the first mistake happens that why you're changing your CRM, it is not clearly defined.
Okay. So that's why the way most organizations approach it is bad is they're not clearly defining what the CRM is and what we're supposed to be using it for.
Well, so so far this year we've been involved in I think at least 20 implementations.
Yeah.
And as you know, but for those listening maybe you don't know, as part of our process, we do a series of deep dives because we want to make sure that we understand what's going on, what's the context, what's the situation for the company, for the reps, how are things working now, and in the sales process deep dive, when we talk to sales managers, I think we're let's just put the number at 20. I think we're over 20, but let's just put the number at 20. 20 out of 20 have said, well, what's important to me is this just has to be simple.
Yeah.
Right? And to me that's such a symptom statement of underlying problems. But here's what I'll say. I'll give my first hot take for today. The objective in changing a CRM is never to change the CRM.
Okay, that's going to be The objective of changing the CRM is never to change the CRM. But
why are you changing the CRM? It has the only reason to change the CRM is that there are outcomes or business results that you're not getting.
Okay.
That you want to that you need to get, or maybe it's competitive position. So someone says we don't have access to the data that we need, and so they define that as that's why they're changing the CRM. But that's not why they're changing the CRM. What is it that you want to do with that data? So what are you, or what I would say even more so is, what are you unable to do
without the data?
With that data, or what are you unable to do without that data? What are you able to do? And really, I would say, what are you unable to do that matters without that data, right? And so when you said when you change the CRM, there's always a change management,
mm-hmm.
and you say that you said that in a way, and I think people think this way, that the CRM is the cause and change management is the result. I think change management is the cause, and a new CRM or a different approach to CRM is the result. And result is probably the wrong term, but changing the CRM, any change to the CRM is a means to an outcome. It's a means to the objective. It's not the objective. So I mean, I've heard lots of really bad. We've implemented 20 we've been involved in, because if you consider some people that we consulted that went on their own, consider some that we consulted that ended up going with another vendor. I mean, we're probably in the 40 range, and so some of the we don't have a modern CRM. So the reason we're changing CRMs is we need a modern CRM. Okay, what does that mean? Our systems don't talk to each other.
Oh,
so
yeah.
We need a CRM that will talk with the rest of our system. Now, I'm not disagreeing that those statements are not true, but those are not reasons to change CRM. And so what I see happen all the time is you've got a bad CRM implementation, so you get frustrated at your CRM, so you change your CRM, and then you implement, and you're showed this beautiful new CRM, and everything's going to be easy.
It's going to solve all your problems.
And then you change your CRM, and you implement the new CRM pretty much like you implemented the old CRM.
Yeah.
And then you go, I don't know why the CRM doesn't work.
Yeah.
Right. So why are you changing CRM? What's the business? I mean, so like the first most important thing is what's the intent?
Mm-hmm.
What's the gap?
Gotcha.
By the way, if you're selling CRM, ask the question, so what? When they give you the answer, we need a modern CRM. And if you're buying CRM, when you're, at your first reasons as to why you're thinking about getting a new CRM, ask yourself, so what?
Yeah.
And you'll get to what that outcome is.
So why is it so difficult to, I'm going to say, why is it so difficult to implement a new CRM? Like, why is this so hard for people to kind of get the adoption that they need to get the team on board, to get the buy-in? Why is that so hard? Because it is, especially within the sales organization.
It is until it isn't. I mean, why is it hard? Well, because it's hard. By the way, if anyone's out there talking about like it shouldn't be hard, that's probably why you haven't been able to achieve it. I think, I mean, it's a lot of things. I mean, change management is a piece of it, and we'll talk about that, I'm sure. So when, especially when you're talking about something like sales operates at, a highly optimized sales process, sales organization in the complex selling world, right? There are other places where you're going to be able to get deeper into it. So if you think of the process to automation, it's mysteries, heuristics, algorithms,
mm-hmm.
and automation's algorithms, right? Yep. Mysteries is everything's one off. Every time you're doing something different every single time.
Yep.
And that exists on a continuum. And then you move into heuristics, generally, but not always true. And by the way, the moment a human gets involved in using anything, you're at heuristics. Because by the way, if you put a human into a mystery, they're going to use whatever existing models they have in their head. What is a model? It's a heuristic to approach the mystery. And one of the challenges that exists, one of the problems that exists is if I have two humans involved in something, I've got two different heuristics.
Yeah.
Right? And those heuristics may be similar. They may be highly, highly aligned, but they are not the same. Right. Yeah. And so the moment you bring humans into it, you're bringing variance, right? And so, variance is a feature of humans, it's not a bug. And then algorithms it's the same thing every single time, right? And so one element is a CRM operates on algorithms. Humans operate on heuristics, and so you have there's a there's a there's a lack of synchronicity between machines and humans.
Yeah.
Right. So just right there initially, you've got to account for that. And again, you've got to account for that as it's a part of the process. It's not a problem with the process. And by the way, that's going to make it hard all the time because humans are naturally going to change. And by the way, when we make these changes, they're very small, almost invisible in the moment. And we're certainly not aware that we're doing it a little bit different. Right. And you've been involved in the conversation where someone says, oh, no, it's really easy. It's we do this and then we hand it over to here. And then before you know it, we've got 13 different branches to, what the if could be that then goes, it's like, oh. And so like from step 1 to step 2 with a human is really somewhere between 5 and 327 steps when you begin to bring algorithm into it. So you have, so we start changing without realizing it. It's a psychological principle called substitution. And we all think we're doing what we were doing, but by the way, that's one reason why anyone who's done any goal setting, you learned a long time ago, you got to write the goal down. Because if you don't write the goal down, you're changing what the goal is on a daily basis, or more so. So you have that element of where it's different. Then I think you have another element that you have a whole legacy approach. So there's a lot of what we do it because that's how we've done it. And, automation and technology came into sales before it came into marketing, right? Marketing, then, ran past sales, but, CRM has been, heck, I got in sales in the 1980s and I used a CRM, right? So the design and the tech of those legacy systems built a framework, built a heuristic to how we approach these things. If CRM were to have just come into existence today, I don't know that we would. Well, I know it would be different than how we're doing it today, and it would probably be, an easier. It would probably be easier to adopt. Although I don't think it would be easy to adopt, because again, I think that aspect is inherent. And by the way, if CRM ever becomes easy to manage and maintain that adoption, then that's a pretty good sign that we're at algorithmic stage. And if we're at algorithmic stage, computers do that far, far, far better than people do. And those are the industries that are drastically decreasing salespeople, right? And there's probably aspects of what you're doing in selling that are algorithmic. And what I would say is, identify the algorithmic pieces of your meta process and get the salespeople out of that. So, the other element is, you can change the marketing system and not impact anybody that's not on the marketing team using the system. My first question to you was, are we limiting this to the sales organization? Well, you're not. We could limit the conversation to the sales organization.
Yeah.
But we can't limit the impact of the CRM to the sales organization, because the sales organization is going to impact your operations. It is going to impact marketing. Marketing is going to impact. So, so if we adopt this new CRM and we, do all these wonderful things, but marketing doesn't make adjustments along the way, then those systems aren't going to be working in alignment together. By the way, I'm not suggesting that you should get, if you get a new marketing system, you shouldn't consider what you're doing in your CRM. I'm just saying you can. Whereas with the CRM, you can't really and have any meaningful change that led you, to get the CRM. Because by the way, marketing, actually, I can say this very confidently. Marketing feeds into the CRM. If the relevant marketing data isn't feeding into the CRM, then you don't really have a CRM, because you don't really have any single place that is the storage of your customer data, if you will.
Yep.
So you've got, it's kind of like, why is a website hard? A website's hard because it impacts every aspect of the business. The same is true with the CRM, and you've got, the nature of how sales work, how salespeople came to be, the legacy of tens of failed implementations. And then, the other element is we look at the CRM as a CRM initiative and not as a sales initiative. And this maybe gets to what you were seeking a little bit more is, there's so many CRM implementations that just don't take in consideration the salesperson.
Yeah.
And then there's even more that don't take into consideration the customer.
What do you mean by that?
How, it's customer relationship management. So,
well, I got that, but how does the customer impacted by what CRM I use or how I implement the CRM?
Well, again, to me, it's more of a how than it is a what.
Mm-hmm.
How does the customer buy? How does the customer engage? How does the customer learn? I mean, I can design. I've designed over the years many beautifully robust sales methodologies that would work really, really well if only buyers would behave. If only buyers would do their part. So we've got a, we're working with the client right now to get the data to align with the fact that the way a core element of their sales is going to occur is you get to one person at one place, you learn something, then you got to connect to other people at other places, and now I've got to orchestrate those elements.
Yeah.
And the system's not designed the way the salesperson is working. So now you're making the salesperson change how they behave. And I would say that originates with the customer, right? It's really aligning to how the customer, it's aligning that customer vector. And I guess in a lot of ways, the CRM is where all the vectors finally meet.
So we talked about, I like what you said about thinking about the customers. Interesting, because I don't think we think about, I don't think that I hear, at least from the implementations that we're doing, that people are really thinking about the customer when they think about their CRM system. And I know
sales and marketing thinks about the customer. I don't want to say no.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a rarity. We're impressed. As a matter of fact, we give awards to companies that are customer centric, right?
Yeah.
Well, you only give awards for things that are exceptional.
Right.
Isn't it messed up that we give awards to a company that, we talk about Apple, and it's kind of funny because I don't think I think Apple's output is very customer centric. I don't think their input is as customer centric as they get credit for. But we talk about Apple in the realm of near worship because they deliver things that their customers love, right? So I think, the number one stakeholder that's missing in the vast majority of business growth conversations is the customer or the customer viewpoint. But sorry, go ahead.
No, you're good. So thinking about the customer, thinking about the sales rep, and then you talked about identifying the algorithmic pieces. Is there anything else that we can do to make sure that we're kind of driving that change in adoption when implementing a new CRM? Or are those the key pieces that you really need to look at? So
a CRM and getting adoption is part of a process. It's a process management initiative. And so, again, what I said in the beginning is the objective of changing your CRM is never about the CRM, or should never be about the CRM. So, and I think we've said this on other podcasts, but it's worth repeating again and again and again. And that is the prime directive is business process must drive the technology, not the other way around. If you think about it, you sat down. This is the problem of taking complex systems and bringing them into the 2 or 3 dimensional realm where humans can work on them. And that is, we take something that is interwoven in multiple other complex things, we pull it out, we isolate it. And the moment we isolate it, we've now screwed up the perspective. Because in this, even to this point, and we're 20 some minutes into this conversation, and we're still talking about it as the algorithmic, the this about the CRM. And really the question is, what's the process? What's the process that we're enabling and supporting? And so if we're talking about a sales organization, we're talking about customer revenue acquisition, and then to some degree, expansion and maybe retention. And I say maybe retention because retention might be in another realm outside of the sales organization.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
But so you've got to map that flow, and that flow is complicated. That flow is messy, and that's a hard thing to do. And it's candidly, it's a frustrating thing to do. We enjoy doing it because we've done it so many times. We know what we're looking for.
Right.
And just seeing some of the lights turn on and whatnot, it's fun for us, but that's also because we're in the business of doing that. I'm not always sure. I think when we're done, our clients enjoy it. I'm not sure they enjoy it while we're doing it.
Yeah.
But really getting things mapped out, and because you just want to go, well, no, that's it. The other thing that you do too is you've got to realize, especially in 99% of situations where this work hasn't been done, you're only going to get a fraction of it right. So one of the mistakes happens too is if we were to map our process out the way we map it, and if someone were to treat it as though, okay, that's the process, it's been mapped out, boom, locked in. No, we know if we're lucky, we've captured a third of what's really happening.
Yeah.
Right? And by the way, even if we got it quote unquote right, though I don't know what right is, but even if we did, it's only a matter of a very short period of time before it's not going to be right.
Right.
Because the situations are constantly changing, the contexts are changing, and we're doing things, they're doing things, our competitors are doing things, the economy is doing things, all those things are happening. And so this is a complex ecosystem. It would be like someone saying, okay, here's my weather report for the year.
Yeah.
Right?
Well, and it's to your point, there's a lot of what you were saying earlier, there's a lot of humans involved in a sales process on either side. So you've got variance in there, so you can flow it out, but a human's going to come in and potentially mess that up.
What do you mean by that?
Either the customer or the sales rep, there's always situations, no matter how much you map that out, where there's an exception or there's a variable that you may not have accounted for in that flow. So like you said, we can flow it out, but I think you only account for a piece of it, because there are always going to be it. And again, I don't think we plan to the exception, but you're always going to have.
Well, what I would say, and what we do is we do plan for the exception, because there's always an exception path. Now, the exception path is manual.
Yeah.
Right. But we account for that, and we plan for that, and we accept that. And then what's interesting is, the exception happens, and then it happens, and then it happens, and then it happens. And then you begin to go, oh, wait a second, we're seeing a pattern in these exceptions. And we go, oh, okay, now all of a sudden it feeds into that. So, that's again where I'm saying the human is a feature of the system, not a bug of the system. And the other thing that I want to point out is I think that those points of exception are either inflection points,
Mm-hmm.
which means they make a difference and we want variance, or they're flaws, in which case we've got a system flaw that needs to be figured out. Now, in my experience, when you have a low value variance, it is caused by a mistake earlier in the mapping of that underlying process. A human's immediate reaction is to treat the symptom, to treat the issue that we see as the issue that it is, and not to trace it back. And how do I know that? Because I know that everybody, before they go see their doctor, when they're hurt, they take in probably more Advil or Tylenol or whatever symptom masking agent they can take, and it's only when they haven't taken it. Remember, we call somebody that doesn't take too much Advil before they go to the doctor, we call them a hypochondriac.
Yeah.
Right. And so like that's what we do is we treat the symptom. We say, okay, like make the pain go away.
Right.
The human body is a amazing dynamic self-healing system, but computers are not. Right. So when we treat computers with the equivalent of Advil, computers don't have the benefit of time where the computer heals itself. Now, there's a theory that AI maybe will do that one day. We'll see. We're looking at those elements, and we isolate, right? We isolate into, and we're not viewing it through the lens of the holistic system to figure out, why did that happen? If that's a variance that we don't want, then why? And then maybe what can we do to deal with and manage that? I think a great example of what a CRM implementation could look like is if you've ever flagged a ride on Uber. It's a really easy, intuitive
Oh, I see what you're saying.
process,
Okay.
right?
Okay.
But think about all the complexity that
Yeah.
went into making that easy and intuitive, right? They didn't just come up with hey, let's get somebody to draw a really nice looking app, and right, there's a whole lot of mapping and et cetera, et cetera. And by the way, the complexity that Uber has to manage is a fraction of the complexity of a customer acquisition and expansion process.
Right. Yeah.
Right. Now the good news is you don't have to map it all out on day one. And the other good news is if you were to map it out on day one, it wouldn't do any good because it'd be changing. So you should always, they say in sales, always be closing. Well, I would say with CRM and RevOps, always be mapping.
I like that. Always be mapping.
That's where the hard work is. Like the hard work is putting it up front so that the system can work. And so why is it hard to get adoption? Well, it's hard to get adoption because every time you make somebody pull out of their routine, then adoption on that becomes hard. I stick to the routine, so it's really hard to break somebody's routine. But one of the things that happens, like what a good implementation will do, is it will change routine, but it will change it, and there'll be a consistency.
Yeah.
So it becomes a routine. But if you haven't built it so that it can become that routine, then it never becomes a routine, and so it doesn't get adopted. And it doesn't get adopted because it's easier to do my job not using it than it is to do my job using it. And so let me pause there because I might take us off into another rabbit hole, and I don't mean to do that yet.
I want to switch gears a little bit, and I want to talk about who's the right person to kind of drive that change for sales. Who's the right kind of stakeholder within your organization to drive that? Because frequently we see these initiatives will be pushed by marketing or by IT. So I want to know who is the right person to kind of drive that change within the sales organization, or people. It might not just be one person.
To drive what change?
To get buy-in within the sales organization, to get the
buy-in of what?
Of use of the CRM, of changing the process that you're of buy-in of the process that you're implementing within the CRM, because we talked about the right way to do the implementation is to kind of map your business process.
What's interesting?
What?
I never hear manufacturers talk about getting buy-in to how they manufacture widgets. Let's get buy-in to how this machine works.
I never hear that either, so I can't argue you.
So I don't understand why.
That point.
I mean, what is buy-in?
Buy-in is kind of getting the team, I guess, for lack of a better term,
what Apple didn't get buy-in on before they had it? Apple did not get buy-in on their phone. I mean, if you go back to the days when Apple released the iPhone, the prognosticators, the focus groups, the people who said that's not going to work. By the way, I was one of them. I will admit I was wrong on the iPhone because and by the way, at that time I carried 2 phones, an iPod, a little recorder. I don't know why I carried the recorder, but I felt like I should be able, I've never been someone who actually records my thoughts, right? But anyways, and I said, look, you know what? When I want when I'd go for a walk, I'd bring my iPod, and I would oftentimes not bring my phone. I'm like, look, when I'm on a walk, I don't want my phone. When I want to listen to music, I want my iPod.
Yeah.
I had a BlackBerry and I had a regular cell phone. Look, when I want to send an email, I use my BlackBerry. Right? I've got my individual devices for my and that's what I wanted. And I remember, I think the iPhone was out for like a couple of days because I think it came out like late June, early July. And I was at the beach with my in-laws. My father-in-law was, Apple early adopter, everything, and he had the iPhone. And let me tell you what, I remember the iPhone 1. I have one still. I mean, that thing was slow. But he let me look at it, and I was like, you know what I did next? I went to my phone and I found where the local AT&T store was at Rehoboth Beach, and that next morning I had an iPhone. So I didn't buy the iPhone. I didn't buy into the iPhone until basically I had the iPhone, right? And you know what? Apple didn't do a whole bunch of stuff on. They didn't do a whole bunch of stuff getting buy-in, right? And this is where I agree. if you ask people what they want, Henry attributed to Henry Ford is, if I'd asked people what they wanted, if I made what people wanted, I would have invented a faster horse.
Yeah.
Right?
Okay.
Steve Jobs says people don't know what they want until they have it.
Yeah.
Right? And so when if you're talking about change and you're thinking about buy-in, when you're soliciting that type of input, people can only conceive of the system that they're in. And so when you're looking at, like, I don't know that you would get buy-in, but where you want to get feedback is you want to understand frustration. You want to understand where is the friction. You want to understand where things get in the way of. And then, I don't know that I'm going to win any awards for saying this, that you then have to compare that to what are your organizational objectives. I don't think that the best sales process for a company that's implementing a change is the sales process that everybody buys into. Somebody's not going to want to do it that way. And you know what? That's okay. Maybe you shouldn't be here. I mean, I have some people, look, my team doesn't want to put their data in that. Well, okay, as an organization, is it important that you have the data?
Yeah.
If as an organization it's not important, then okay. But if this is important as an organization, then it's like, look, guys, we're going to figure out how to get the data in without it being disruptive to you. Like that's what I'm going to shoot for. But so there's an element that says, I think the number one cause of failure for initiatives in general, and certainly change management initiatives, is we focus on buy-in. Now, this also comes where I say, like, I don't shoot for finish. We call our launches, we call them SLC. They're SLC launches, simple, lovable, complete, right? So it's a simple, we built it to where it addresses the core elements. People like it, right? And it gets the job done. It's fully usable.
Yeah.
Like, so that's one of the places where I think, where a lot of people make mistakes with pilots or tests is they say, well, we'll start off here without the right functionality, and then we'll get adoption. And it's like, well, no, hey, hold on a second, that's not complete. And now you're not going to get adoption if it's not complete. So you've got to figure out where that is. But okay, we're going to look at it, and we're going to work this aspect of it. It's going to become, we're going to see what works, what doesn't work. Everyone's going to get used to it. When I do programs, you've seen me do the interlock your fingers, now change it. Right now, I've done this enough times that it doesn't bother me. But when you have people do this, they like freak out.
Yeah.
Like, a lot of them can't even do it, right? But there's literally no difference between this state and this state, except whether the right's on top of left or left's on top of right. But you've got a way that you've done it, and when I have you do something different, it's just going to feel really, really uncomfortable. So that you get a lot of resistance to that. And typically what we'll do, and we can't always do this, but typically what we'll do is, because remember, this is not a CRM change initiative. This is a sales organization change initiative, right? This is a sales initiative. We're gonna work on and adopt a piece of the process at a time. We're not going to try to change everything in one fell swoop. So we're going to kind of map out what that adoption curve should look like. So who should drive it? Well, on one hand, it should be the organization's senior management, whatever your senior leadership team is the only reason to make these changes is because, candidly, because you need to.
Yeah.
Right. If you don't need to change if you don't need to change, now you might say we're fine right now, but if we don't change, in 3 years, we'll be at risk. To me, we need to change, because if we don't change, then okay. But if the organization isn't, if this isn't being done to meet organizational imperatives, status quo resistance will win. And that has nothing to do with the CRM, its implementation, or anything else. That's just the dynamic.
Yeah.
Right. So they're organizational. Then the next person, if we're talking about CRM and we're talking about sales adoption, who's the head of the sales organization? Right. I mean, you have kids, right?
Yes.
And I know in certain places you're the head of what time is it go to bed? What time is it to go to bed?
Yeah.
Right. And here's what I know. If you are the least bit uncertain in the communication of what time is it to go to bed, then you have lost.
It's true, especially with a 5-year-old.
You may not be certain, but you better communicate it with certainty.
Right.
Now, what's interesting is if you communicate it with certainty when you're not certain, and then you get more information, you can make a change without it going to chaos and anarchy.
Right.
Right? 8 o'clock. Oh no, the firework. Yeah, we do want to go see the fireworks. Okay, everybody, we're gonna 9 o'clock. Okay, but if you
Yeah.
go, well, you're lost, right? So I would say,
Right.
it's the same. That's just an organizational dynamic. So, so who should drive it? Who's driving? Well, one problem is there's typically a lot of times there's no one driving a sales process. So that's where your issue is. But yeah, it's got to be. It's got to be top down, but not top down dictatorial. But it has to be. I think a lot of what leadership is. I want leadership to give me certainty of direction. I can only make, and again, I worry in saying this that I'm going to have a whole bunch of dictators come out of this. People can only make so many choices in so many areas. And so one of the things that leadership does, and what clarity is and what context really is taking away a number of the choices so that you're free to make the choices in the areas that actually really matter for you, right? You talk to any truly creative person, and they will tell you that a strong process is crucial to their creative process.
Yeah.
The most routine-driven people I know are in disciplines that have no built-in restraint. Like I don't need my line. If I've got somebody working on the manufacturing line, they don't need to have routines because the machine is the routine. It dictates it, right? But you talk to a painter, they have their routine and they own it. Talk to a baseball, they're the most, what's another word for a routine? Superstition.
Yeah.
Right? You show me a ball player, I'll show you someone, you show me a top ball player, I'll show you somebody who's superstitious. And I used to say, look, I'm not superstitious at all. It's just really important that I wear the same socks if we won the last time I wore them.
Right.
Now, my wife eventually taught me that it's the same socks that matter. It's not whether or not they've been washed.
That's an interesting picture in my head now. So
hey, I said I'm totally transparent on the show, Jess.
Yes, I appreciate that. So sometimes we will go in with a CRM initiative and kind of say, okay, we're gonna get the rep to use the system by changing a certain behavior. We've used it with quotes, do something that makes it lighter for the rep. It makes it easy for them to understand kind of the application of how this is going to make their lives easier. So it kind of taking that and thinking about if we want to focus on a behavior or an activity as kind of an entry point into the CRM, what activity would you start with? Would you focus on with the sales team? Like what?
So it's interesting, Jess, that you used a whole bunch of terms that I would actually. So you started off when you said with the CRM initiative, and so again, I'm going to reiterate that if you're thinking that I'm starting off with the CRM initiative, then you're
thinking about it the wrong way.
You're in a hole. The other thing I would say too, and I know the example that you're talking about with quotes, I would argue with you that, and I think salespeople would argue with you that we've made their life easier. We've made the organization's life easier.
Okay, that's fair.
We've probably made them more productive, right? But it was easier for them to just go into their spreadsheet and do it however they wanted to do it. Even though it took more time, it was easier. But what we did here, and this is actually this is that rabbit hole that I avoided. We always think about like enforcement from a top-down enforcement, right? Remember what I said? I said, if it's easier to do your job doing it than not doing it. Now, one of the things that our client did here that I would probably have done different is they said, you use quotes now. You can't do Excel. You can't use Excel anymore. And I think some people were creating them in Word. I would have said, you can use whatever you want to use. The quote has to be in quotes. So if you want to do double work, you can do double work, right? But for the next step of the system to work, the quote has to be in the system. Now, we worked with another company that struggled with CRM adoption up to the point of the quote. They had no problem with CRM adoption with the quote because you actually had to go into the CRM to be able to do the quote. Right. Now, what we did there was we identified, other things that kind of put in places where, okay, we needed to have that in earlier. And so some of it, we think about the promoting factors always, and this is why I've said, behavioral economics, behavioral science is a key discipline of RevOps, of strategic RevOps, is understanding, what are the inhibiting aspects. It's not only how do we make it easier for you to use the system, but also how do we make it harder for you not to, right? And so in reality, what we did with quotes was we made it harder to not use the system.
Yeah.
Right. Now, organizationally and for a whole bunch of other reasons, that data should be in there, and we can, and not having that data in there was right for all kinds of problems. But that's one of the reasons I love CPQ for that reason, right? It's a very clear place that can reduce a whole lot of chaos and anarchy. In terms of picking that spot, I think it's really situational. So an easy one that I would pick, though, and this is why it's in everybody who needs to drive this. We're really good at telling reps that they must. If it's not in the system, it doesn't exist. If it's not in the system, you don't get paid your commission.
Yeah.
Of course, I don't know anyone that's actually followed through with that. But here's one of the things that I do, right? Is I do pipeline review. I do sales progress review, and I do the sales progress review from the CRM. And so I put together what needs to be done, and I walk through and I review it before it starts.
Yep.
Right. And now I come in and I don't ask the question, so what's going on in this account? I look in the CRM and I pick up based upon whatever that data is. Mm-hmm. I go from there and I go, why has nothing been done in this account? Like, oh, no, I've done a lot in this account. And I'm, well, okay, I don't see it. Well, here, let me tell you, and especially early on, I'll do something along the lines of, what, let's get it updated. I'll review. We don't have time for the, the ground we want to cover today doesn't enable us to do this, right? Did you ever have to do like a term paper where you're pretty convinced that your teacher didn't read all the term papers?
Yes.
It made writing the term paper even harder, right?
Yeah.
Why am I writing it? You're not even going to read the damn thing.
Yeah.
Well, I can tell you, we have to put information in the system, right? And the sales manager says, "When's the last time you called so and so?" And I think to myself, "It's in the blank CRM."
Yeah.
Right. What do you mean? Well, you just encouraged me not. Like, why am I going to put it in the CRM?
Why am I putting it in there? Yeah.
If you're going to ask me about it anyways.
Yeah.
Right. We, one of the things we do is we say, look, you do not move deal cards. You don't move cards. You don't move deals from stage to stage. You mark out the exit criteria.
Yeah.
Which by the way, the number of people that I know that don't move a deal because they forgot to. I mean, I remember there was the the hour of prep before the pipeline review, which is basically reps going in, going, okay, well, what do I have to remember to move?
Yeah.
And I also, when you do it that way, the other thing that happens is, I think reps are more managing their manager with how the deals are distributed in the pipeline than they're actually managing the deal, right? Whereas, so what we do is, it takes away opinion. So now if a deal's at stage 3, then we know everything in stage 1 and stage 2 has been completed. So if it hasn't been completed, and I just assume that it has been, right? And how I will ask the question and expect the strategy, et cetera. We're about to roll this out with somebody because they're going to be implementing some better sales planning, and that data is going to automatically feed into what the sales plan is, and what we expect to have completed is going to be highly dependent on what stage it is in the process. That is based on the underlying process map, et cetera. And so all of these things work together, and that's where this genius gets built into the system. And now the rep all of a sudden doesn't have to think as much. That's where it gets easier, because in the moment it's not easier. So from a linear standpoint, it's actually a little bit harder.
Right.
But the residual effort is lower. And now I'm able to manage more, and it's like any good project management system, et cetera. And so that's why it's got to be like, to say, what should we do? I think too often we look for that shortcut there is no shortcut. It's got to be something real and legitimate about what's happening in that company's true process of how people work.
That makes sense. Yeah, I like that. All right. I thought this was really good. I think we covered, you had a couple of hot takes that I really liked. I think the point about, we've talked about that people don't think about the sales rep when they implement CRM, but I think the point about people don't think about the customer is a really interesting one. And it's not a conversation I ever hear being had when we talk about CRM implementation. So that's really interesting. And then
that's because you don't attend the sales deep dives anymore, Jess.
That must be why. That must be why. And then I think the dichotomy between the CRM being an algorithm and the fact that you're throwing in people, which is heuristic, like that's a piece that it really highlights why this is so hard for everybody, because you've got two.
And I want to emphasize what's hard is when you try to operate as though that's not the case, right? And so when you manage for it to be the case, and then you also manage it through the ends of your goal should not be to have the CRM full. There's an ongoing, every 90 days you should see greater adoption because you've built much more robustness into the system that enables that residual impact.
Yep. Well, cool.
All right. Well, thanks, Jess.
Thanks, everybody.
And that's a wrap on this episode of the RevOps Show. If you enjoyed this episode, please make sure to go subscribe on Spotify and Apple Podcasts. Leave us a review and share the episode. If you have any questions that you would like to ask Doug or Jess, email me at hannah@imaginellc.com or hit us up on Twitter @demandcreator. Until next time, remember, you can't solve your upstream problems downstream.